Welcome to That's a Tap, another episode with CT and DJ, here to break down the latest fight news happening in the UFC. DJ, how are you feeling?
Feeling pretty good, CT. You know, obviously thought we'll have the main event for UFC 300 by now, but not the case. Outside of that, we're doing well. UFC is back again. They came back. They had that big pay per view. Went on a break for a week, and now they're back again tomorrow with another big event. Not tomorrow, this weekend. But yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm excited for this episode because we're going to talk about UFC 300. Or the what's missing in UFC 300, which is the main event, which has been teased a lot. So keen to get your thoughts on that. Keen to see what may be in store for us, and then obviously looking ahead at the fight card as well. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm excited too. Yeah, we had a huge pay-per-view which we broke down. Check that out if you haven't seen the episode where Dricus du Plessis became and new middleweight champion.
yeah,
And then, it's correlating to what we're going to talk about with UFC 300, and we're waiting for the main event. We saw a little leak of a graphic behind Dana White of the board. We know some of the huge announcements
yeah,
already, which we have talked about, but we're waiting for the crown jewel, right? That's gonna make
yeah.
this stand out because they kind of hyped it up, DJ, where they're under pressure now
Mm.
because I mean,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, like if the card was the one that we see, it's still gonna be amazing, but
yeah,
it's UFC 300, like
absolutely. Man, like, look, the card as it is a very solid card, right? And extremely comparable to UFC 299. Now, the reason why a lot of people are gravitating towards UFC 299 is that no one expected it to be that big of a card with all these big names that are featuring in that card. Now that they've done that, and add on the fact that they've been creating hype among the MMA fans with, look, UFC 300 is going to be this, that. We've had Dana White say, hey, man, like you see the first fight of the card, which is in the early prelims, and you'll be like, wow, is that in the prelims? All this kind of stuff. It obviously naturally increases our excitement to see and expect. It obviously raises the expectations, and naturally I'm assuming everyone else is in the same boat as me. Is that okay? The elevated expectations for UFC 300, and then the card we got for UFC 299, which is a huge card, is that you're naturally going to expect something bigger and better than the 299 card. Even the 298 card, man, like there's some really really solid fights. I feel like 298 is going under the radar because of 299 and 300. But man, 298 is a massive card, and we'll preview it when we come to that. But Volk's fighting, Robert Whitaker's fighting, Andrew Cejudo's fighting, Ian Gary's fighting. It's a stellar card. So yeah, man, like I think with that and looking at the trajectory with which the UFC has moved forward, and that iconic number 300 being there, I think we are expecting a banger of a main event. Like the card is pretty solid. Add a crazy main event. I know we're gonna do some guesswork. I know we've been throwing some predictions around, and like either one of those will elevate this card to that superstar card. Now, I don't know if you recall UFC 200. On paper when they first announced it, was an extremely solid card. The main event was, I believe, John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Obviously, we know what happened. John Jones couldn't compete due to the controversies, and they had to change the whole card around. And Brock Lesnar came in to fight. Main event was Amanda Nunes versus Misha Tate. So yeah, it was an interesting turn of events. Now we hope the same fate doesn't fall on UFC 300. But yeah, man, like let's get into it, right? Like, what's the delay? What do you think is the reason why they've now Dana White on the post-fight press conference after UFC 297 said, "Hey, I've got we're obviously gonna get back in the war room, get this shit sorted. We're gonna announce all these fights, UFC 300 fights." Then he came back and said, "Look, I've got the UFC 300 main event for you." There's a couple of things as well. Like I'll put these questions in the mix too, so you can tackle all of them together, CT. What the other one is, there was a lot of rumors around Bilal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards. Now, there were strong indications from the fighters and also the UFC that this will be featured in UFC 300. There was obviously, again, another uh, strong sense that this is not going to be the main event, however. Right. No, we can't say the card's entirely filled. They could add two more title fights, right? Which I have an inkling is what's going to happen, right? But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think, you know, that Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad will still feature in UFC 300? And what do you think is the hold up? What is this big matchup they are, teasing us with and not announcing?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned the word tease. I think, it's in their interest to kind of, announce the ones they've announced, but hold off a little bit, hold back a little bit so that, you and I are talking about it, fans are listening about it. And so, but attached to that is I think they're going bigger, they're working on a few things is what I
Hmm.
feel, DJ,
Yeah,
and I feel like, there's let the rumors spread,
yeah,
Conor could, could they be waiting to try to sort out something with Conor, Nate the Great Diaz, possibly. Um, yeah, and then like you said, the Bilal one would be, maybe something where they need to, find the contract, the signatures,
yeah,
negotiate. I think these fighters, DJ, are probably, holding out a little bit more. Sometimes they can give
yeah,
the UFC a headache. So yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things, and I feel like something's brewing. Normally,
yeah,
when you do have to wait this long, it's kind of a a huge deal that they're working
yeah,
on. What do you
yeah.
think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I feel like they've got a lot of options on the table, right? They have actually enough options to go with two big title fights. My prediction last time when we spoke about this topic was the Alex Pereira, taking the light heavyweight title fight. Being that one either with Ankalaev or if Jamal Hill's back and fit and strong and ready to go. Let's not forget this is still in April. It's still a way away. We've got two more pay per views to go before that. We've also always got Conor McGregor lingering in the back, right? But no, I think we spoke about this. Like with Conor McGregor headlining a card, it means it drastically increases the pay per view value and the revenue that it's going to in turn bring in, which means any champion on that card who's eligible for a pay per view point will receive those extra. That extra money as well, which is great for the fighters, but will the UFC want to do that? That's what we've always traditionally seen. Whenever Conor McGregor fights, there are no title fights in those cards as of recently. Um, Having said that, man, then there's Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards. It's like both fighters admitted that that's the next fight, which hasn't been announced yet. I feel like it's a done deal. Either they're trying to slot it to a different card, maybe in the UK, or they are trying to fit it into the UFC 300 card as well. Like we're not sure, but I feel like that fight will be that announcement is imminent. Then you got the graphic on the screen, man. The legendary style bender. Obviously, it wasn't successful last time around. Like itching to get back and get in that win column, make a statement. Uh, Absolute legend of a martial artist. So we know there's a backstory built in with Dricus Plessis, who actually called him out too, right? And then he did say I'm available for UFC 300, and he was bold in that. And I think, man, look, what Dricus has shown us so far is that like he is no joke, right? So him and Stylebender, that's actually going to be a fantastic fight, and I feel like that's getting made. This is my assumption. Okay, Izzy's putting this out, and we know he likes to. He's very good on social media. He's very good with sort of giving you not the whole picture, but uh, teasing us, and which is what he's doing. And look, man, I'll be if that is the main event, if Israel Adesanya comes back, fights Dricus du Plessis. I know there's questions about whether he deserves it. Man, this guy is the greatest middleweight of all time. Had the best middleweight run next to Anderson Silva. So yeah, look, I'll be down for it. That'll be a great main event. By way of elimination, obviously the heavyweight title's not going to be there unless they get Aspinall to defend the interim title. But who against? That's going to be another big question there as well. He's already fought Sergey Pavlovich, right? And I don't know if we want to. The UFC will give Cyril Gahn another shot, given he had two unsuccessful attempts at the title. So yeah, so that's definitely. I feel like the heavyweights out of the question. Light heavyweight is very much in the mix. We just don't know because Pereira came and said like news coming soon as well. This is the whole thing, man. Like there's a few fighters, some big names who've come out and said fight news coming soon, right? And they all seem to be in fight shape as well. If you look at their social media, they're always training. It seems like you might even assume they're in fight camp, right? Another big name that's come out and said, look, something's coming is Hamza Chimaev. He came in on his social media and he said, hey, stay tuned, something's coming up. So I don't know, man. Could you imagine if they do Israel Adesanya versus Hamza Chimaev for the number one title, the title eliminator? Which I don't think, because they have this fight in their hands, which is Dricus and Israel Adesanya. It's got a built-in storyline. It's gonna do great numbers. The card's already going to do great numbers. You need something to elevate it, right? And this is where these storylines come into play. And then maybe add Hamzat in there with some another fighter like to elevate the card. I think that, man, imagine that. Imagine Adesanya and Dricus as the headline, and then you got. I mean, it'll be stunning if Leon and Bilal gets added to it too. And then obviously, you got Hamzat in there with maybe Jared Cannonier, who seems to be the outside at the moment. Or we know Sean Strickland's always game to fight, right? He wants to come back and he wants to get back in there. He just had a title loss, a close title fight. Um, Although my strong belief is that he should get that rematch. I don't think that's what's happening. So if that's not the case, then maybe he fights Hamzat, because there seems to be a lot of chatter there too, right? Because maybe that is what's happening. Maybe Hamzat's fighting Strickland because Hamzat has had a lot to say about Strickland in terms of what they experienced in training. Sean Strickland has been quite silent on that topic. It is that thing where you say you don't talk about what happens in training. But also training is training and fighting is fighting. You know what I mean? Like, so look, a lot of possibilities, a lot of interesting possibilities. Islam's definitely out. Like, I think when they announced the Oliveira Sarukian fight, I was extremely convinced that you could not have changed my mind. I was very convinced that the main event was going to be Islam Makhachev versus Justin Gaethje, because that is as big as it gets, right? Like the premier division of the UFC. No arguments there. One of the best divisions, talent-rich divisions, pound for pound number one fighter takes on the BMF title holder, both titles on the line. I think that would have just elevated to the next level. I feel like that's what the UFC wanted to do, and unfortunately, maybe didn't go that way. So they had to get Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway, which is also a great fight. Yeah, man. Like, and look, to expand on that, I also feel the fact that Dana was so confident in saying, I've got the UFC main event ready, I'll announce it, and he still hasn't, tells me that there's been problems in the back end trying to get these matchups made. Could be due to injuries, it could be due to negotiations. I'm not sure what, because I feel like they had a fight in mind and they were maybe almost there, and then sort of maybe it backfired. So we got to wait and see. Unfortunately, the weight game continues, but let's hope the announcement is worth the wait.
Yeah, you said it. I think there's always, a dream matchup which you think makes, perfect sense, but sometimes they can just never get it to happen because you've got to get two parties to agree. Maybe a Gaethje was supposed to fight Islam. Maybe Islam just couldn't make it for whatever reason, and then they had to make the Holloway one, because I did feel like that's kind of a left field
Yeah,
Holloway
it
Gaethje
was.
one. Like that was, you can't convince me otherwise that was their first choice. Like,
Nah, not at all, man. Like, I mean, it's a great fight. No arguments there. Do they just Max Holloway deserve to fight for the BMF title? Yes. Um, Dana's been quite vocal about, look, that's first it was a one-off, and then became it wasn't a one-off, right? Because then Justin Gaethje and Poirier fought for it. And then it was like, well, look, it's not a title that'll get defended. But now it seems like there is a defense happening, right? Um, Man, like, look, if things go as you know, say for example, if it goes in Justin Gaethje's favor, then that big matchup still is there, which is the pound for pound number one versus the BMF challenger. But if Justin Gaethje loses, what does that mean? You know what I mean? That's another big matchup that you're putting at risk because Max Holloway is no walk in the park. He may be a 145 pounder. Obviously, the last time he went up to 155 wasn't as successful with Dustin Poirier. But man, you never know. Max Holloway is always game, right? If he wins, then what happens? There's another whole shakeup, right? You've not got another big name in the mix. Then you got, let's not forget, you got Charles Oliveira and Arman Sarukian fighting for a number one title contender fight, right? So if one of them wins, let's not forget that it's all in the same timeline. Gaethje is fighting Holloway in the same card as Oliveira and Sarukian, and Dana's come out and said Oliveira Sarukian's a number one title contender fight. So what happens to Gaethje then? Is he going to be iced again? Well, are we wasting this guy's prime? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the timing hasn't worked out. I also feel like these were not. You're right, man. Like, I don't think the Gaethje Holloway was their first choice. I think it was just, you know what, we need this BMF title in this card because in an ideal world they would have waited for Islam to come back and then they would have wanted to make the Gaethje Islam fight straight away, right? So yeah, look, it's quite up in the air at the moment. I just can't see why they didn't do the light heavyweight title fight as well. I know they're going to see. This is the other thing, right? When you got champions from particular regions, right, you want to try and hold on to them for events that are taking place there. Right? Like, and one of the things, like Leon Edwards, he'll be big to have a pay per view in the UK. We saw that with the Usman fight, the second one. Um, Pereira, right, and Pantoja, they're both from Brazil. We've got a massive Rio card coming up, right? So they want to try and have them fighting there. So it's just a lot going on. I feel there is a lot of thought going to it, but at the same time, I feel like there are some obvious matchups that can still be made. Like, I don't think it makes a difference. So yeah, at this point, man, like, if gun to my head, what is the main event going to be? I'm going to go with Dricus versus Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title fight. I think that's going to be the main event.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think thinking more about what you keep saying to me about Conor, and I think, I kind of thought it was a real possibility, but I'm thinking after what you've said sometimes about, Conor, always
Mm,
being the main event, of any card, and then you're going to need him, if he return when hypothetically, if and when he returns, DJ, he's
yeah,
going to have to be, fill another card, and you think they would want to save him
absolutely.
and Chandler, right? If they put
Yeah,
him and Chandler on this one, what does that mean for all the other
yeah.
upcoming
Because
cards?
think of this, right? Like with the McGregor card, you could literally put anyone in that card, and that card will still be a blockbuster card. That's just the nature of it, right? So for the UFC, they wouldn't probably waste that on a card that's already going to do well, right? They'd want to try and stagger that out. I just also feel like looking at Conor, like it doesn't seem like he's in fight camp. Chandler seems like he's lost. Now they're talking about Diaz. Like, I mean, I love both the Diaz fights, but like, I just, man, like, where did that come from? Like, you strung Chandler along for like more than a couple of years, right? He could have fought a few people. He declined Arman Sarukian when he called him out, and now Sarukian's fighting for a number one contender fight. So it's
Yeah, it's a
ridiculous. Whereas
circus
this,
at the moment.
it is. Look, it's not sure. I just still think they need to keep that matchup, uh, McGregor Chandler, because one, we built that fight. They took too long. I think. Look, people may agree with me, not, but my opinion is that making them do the not the contender, the tough. Was it tough? Yeah, the Ultimate Fighter was not the best move, right? I felt they were pressured. Am I right in saying that that was around the time when Francis Ngannou was announcing his association with PFL? Maybe I can't really recall, but I feel like it came around another big announcement, and obviously the UFC wanted to trump that. And what better way to do that than use one of their biggest names? So I feel like they rushed into that tough season with McGregor, and then without having any idea when he's going to fight, because by now you just all interest has been lost, which is quite disappointing. Because to be honest, it is a great fight because Chandler's the type of guy who comes forward and he does make it is an exciting fight, right? But yeah, look, man, that's just it's quite um, interesting that to see where they'll end up with. But I'll tell you what, right? Like, man, if you don't agree with me on this, I'll be very confused, right? There's one way to, right? Forget about Pereira, forget about the middleweight title, forget about heavyweight, John Jones, forget about all of that. There is one way to make this card, right, stand out and be the best card ever, right? So it's simple. The main event, right, it's not even going to be an MMA event. The main event will be an even a power slap for 5 rounds. You get someone from Power Slap, and that's the main event, and that's the one that sells the card, right? It's and no small boy from Houston, but they pack a punch.
Oh yeah, yeah. Look, it could be a sideshow. Um, but yeah, we wait to see. Look, Dricus has got the momentum. There's
Yeah.
backstory. It makes a lot of sense, but it also makes a lot of sense to do Africa. But we know they're a little bit
Mm,
far away.
yeah.
What about a Kamaru Usman? We haven't
Yeah,
we,
man.
we haven't heard
That's the
much
other
about
thing, right?
him.
That's the other thing. Okay, we are not talking enough about Kamaru Usman since he lost the title. Obviously, you know, you could argue that it did take a lot of that shine away from him, going from the pound for pound best fighter to being head kick knocked out and then being dominated by Leon Edwards. But let's not forget that he went, he almost beat Hamzat Chimaev, right? He had a strong third round. He looked great at middleweight, and to top it off, man, he came off the couch and fought him. He took it on a what was it 4 days notice. So why are we not clamoring for Kamaru Usman to come back? I would have loved to see Kamaru Usman versus Robert Whittaker. I think that would have been a great fight. But even the Kamaru Usman Khamzat Chimaev rematch will still be intriguing. Like if they want to put that together again, because how much does a full camp? Because we know this is someone who's been at the very top of the mountain for a very long time, right? Not just being a champion, but also being the pound for pound best and constantly challenging himself. So man, that will be very interesting to see how that would have panned out. So I can't understand where Kamaru is going to fit in there. Maybe what Hamzat's saying is that fight, or maybe he's going to fight another middleweight contender. But I'd like to see Kamaru more often because he obviously, you know, he's not getting any younger. And as time progresses, we'd like to see these great fighters fight more often. So if that opportunity is there, we'd love to see him in action. Man, imagine that. Imagine a name like Kamaru Usman, how much that'll add value to these cards. So yeah,
Yeah, they've got to do Africa this year. I mean, it seems to be on their agenda, but well,
yeah,
Dricus is a champion, so yeah, if he can defend one or two, they'll probably make it happen. But what about another name? When I just seen, the UFC started to promote Michael Venom Page, MVP. Right, his
Ooh,
debut is going to be a big splash as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's another thing, right? Like the 299 was already packed. Why it could have been? Why did they not wait one more month to put it on UFC 300? So, but nonetheless, massive fight, massive uh, name. One of those few people who are outside of the UFC who has a big name value. No surprises that the UFC bagged him. And man, what a matchup to come into! Like, damn, you get signed into the best organization in the world, and then you're told, "Hey, you're fighting Kevin Holland." Because trust me, man, Kevin Holland comes to fight. Win, lose, or draw, he just brings it. Right, that intensity, man. He's an exciting fighter. He's one of your favorite fighters. So yeah, like 299 is going to be a good card. 29. I'm actually excited to be honest, man. If you ask me right now, look, straight out of the bat, what's the card that you're most excited for in the 4 cards that have been or 3 card upcoming cards? My answer is going to be UFC 298. To be honest, not only because there is great fights, great Australian fighters like Whitaker, Volkanovski, but also just generally the card is pretty good, pretty stacked.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've done an amazing job, and I think every year just continues to get better and better and better.
Yep.
Like with 8, 9, and 300, even the way 300 is, I've never been more excited
Yep.
for three pay-per-views, and then obviously we want to get the John Jones, Stipe, Aspinall thing sorted.
Hmm.
That's got to happen this year, and you know
Yeah.
um I sent you something which Aspinall seems to claim that his agent was called, his manager was
Yeah.
called and offered a Stipe
Yeah.
date. What did you think about that?
Oh, I do believe that. I think the UFC would have tried to because man, the biggest title fight of them all is the heavyweight championship, be it boxing, be it MMA, any combat sport. The baddest man on planet Earth is considered the heavyweight champion is identified as the baddest man on the planet, and there's a reason for that because that's the biggest, baddest division. So to have a heavyweight title fight just surpasses all, right? The only problem is the situation they're in at the moment. The greatest of all time has the title, but he's injured. There is a legacy fight in their hands, which is Stipe versus John Jones, but then they can't do it until John Jones is back. Outside of that, we've got um, we've got Aspinall, who's on a tear. He's an up and comer. Is one of those next generation fighters, and he's got the interim title, and he's itching to get back in there and to compete as well. It's absolutely unfair for him to stay out until Jones and Stipe fight. So I'm not surprised they would have offered because it's still a big fight. Right? Either way, let's just say Stipe and Aspinall fight. Stipe wins. That big fight is still there. The legacy fight. If Aspinall wins, it's still a big fight. So you got the interim champ versus the champ. Yeah, I know we've seen that. Not so much as a champ as interim champ with John Jones, but with Cyril Gahn, the next generation fighter. But I feel like Tom Aspinall holding that title as well, and then sort of brings more to the table. I feel like it'll be an exciting matchup. So I'm not surprised they offered it. I'm also not surprised that Stipe declined. I mean, the way Stipe hasn't fought since he lost to Ngannou, which was 4 years ago, or three and a half, 4 years ago. So that tells me that he's not financially crippled and he's desperate to fight. Right? He wants to do that legacy fight with John Jones. He gets it. He understands. So yeah. So he doesn't want to fight anyone else other than John Jones. So that sort of stagnates the heavyweight division. It comes to a standstill until that's sorted at the top of the pile, unless they make Aspinall fight someone else. Because Aspinall doesn't seem to care; he just wants to fight. I also saw a post that Aspinall and Ankalaev are going to fight. Like I don't understand what the heavyweight title. So yeah, so a few things going on, but I just don't think they are going to feature Aspinall in UFC 300. May not be the case. But yeah,
Yeah, look, I'm confused why it was offered in the first place because Stipe said I would never do that. I'm holding off for Jones. So, yeah,
yeah,
that I agree with you. I think I don't know what to make of that, but yeah, I also feel for Aspinall because he's fresh, he's young, he's just
yeah,
won, and it's like,
yeah.
oh, I want to get on with my career. And then these two
Uh,
kind of veterans who I've kind of, I'm still excited to see, Jones's farewell, but I've kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
me, Stipe was one of my favorite
Mm,
in terms of fighters ever. And I got to meet him, in person. And, the Stipe, the person, he's a great dude.
yeah,
But, in terms of just strictly talking about him as a UFC fighter, I've just kind of given up on him. Like, even if these guys fight one more time, there's no future for them anymore. Their
absolutely.
their
Yeah,
prime is in the past, and
yeah.
it's time to look ahead.
It's just a legacy fight. That's what it is. Like, but the other side of it is like you do that fight still is a legendary fight, even if there's no title attached to it. Which is why Aspinall was calling for the title to be stripped and for Aspinall to be named the champion. But then also see the other side of it. Not very. I mean, when you got the greatest of all time holding the title, you don't just go and strip that title unless there's some valid reason. Obviously, the every intention was to have that fight last November. It didn't take place. Injuries happen, and I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, the timeline they're looking at is um, November. So Madison Square Garden again. enough time for Jones to recover and then get into fight camp as well. So yeah.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, DJ. Even if they did it, like, I'm not as excited by it anymore because I feel
No.
like it's just compromise. Like Stipe, you said, hasn't stepped in a cage for like 3 years. So if you think about it, are we even going to get the best of? It's like seeing Tyson and Roy Jones,
Yeah.
fight, after so many years, in their 50s. It's like yes, I get it's a legendary thing,
Yeah.
but it's not going to have any meaning for me because neither guy's at their best, you know.
Yeah, no, and you're not wrong there. You're absolutely wrong there. So the thing is, John Jones uh, is, for them to have John Jones hold the title and go defend it against Stipe, who they consider the greatest heavyweight of all time. I think UFC are really buying into that storyline. To your point, look, it has lost a bit of shine since, right? Especially given the lack of presence from Stipe inside the cage. Right? He hasn't fought anyone since then, so everyone's expecting John Jones to go and get the job done. While John Jones has been fighting for a very long time in the UFC, he's not necessarily old, right? He's you know he's in that mid 30s, so so everyone's expecting because there is they don't have a question mark on that fight. Like who's going to win? It's not a close fight. At least the general consensus is that, right? People feel with Aspinall there's uh, more unknown attached to that fight as opposed to the Stipe fight. The ring rust, the age, everything. Hey, but Stipe, was one of the great heavyweight champions, so he could come and surprise everyone, right? Imagine this, though. I mean, there's no way if John Jones was healthy. Yes, imagine for UFC 300, they would, how Dana kept saying, we're trying to feature like a big name in there. Imagine they bring Francis Ngannou back to fight John Jones for 300. That would have been an ideal UFC 300 main event. But obviously not going to happen because Ngannou is fighting Joshua in just soon, right? Like March. Yeah, same. It's March, April, around that. And then, yeah, and he's attached to the PFL now. So,
Yep. No,
hey,
it's been a great. Yeah, go ahead.
now, did you see a post where Dana White's met the president of the BKFC, Bare Knuckle, which is
No, I didn't see it.
yeah, I think it's David Feldman or Daniel Feldman. He had put it up on his Instagram feed. So they met and they're like, "Oh, productive meeting." Wonder what that was about. Like, I mean, you could assume. I think it's something to do with Mike Perry. Mike Perry's been saying he wants to feature in UFC 300. Thereby put him in there. Hopefully not for the title. But hey, one thing we didn't touch on, and I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, is that the news that broke that hey, there's going to be two new divisions in the UFC. They're going to make the
Yes.
170-pound division redundant, and they're creating two more divisions. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's been talk about that over the years, and I think creating another two divisions and then getting rid of one, I think it makes sense. But I think it does sound like to launch it, it's kind of on the back of a Conor McGregor,
Yeah, I feel like
catering to the McGregor
to get him a
Chandler
belt.
thing, and which I understand, to promote to launch a new division, what better way to
Yeah,
do it than launch it with one two of your biggest names. And
yeah.
just what you said, and I'll get your thoughts on the divisions, but when you said Mike Perry, wouldn't a Mike Perry coming from the BK to fight Nate Diaz coming back off a layoff
Mm.
too, wouldn't that be fireworks?
Yeah, man. Look, and then the Nate Diaz fight's always there because Nate Diaz is still a free agent. The UFC could sign him for one fight deal and bring him back for that, and then get that fight done. I don't know from a competitiveness standpoint how good that fight will be, given obviously Diaz, he boxed well with Jake Paul, but Mike Perry is different, man. Like this guy's got that killer instinct, and he's fighting bare knuckle now, and he's made a big name for it. He's one of those rare individuals who've gone outside of the UFC and managed to make a big name for themselves. So I feel like I have a strong feeling, especially after seeing that pause, that he's going to feature in that card. In what capacity, I'm still not sure.
Yeah, remember, glad it's worked out for him with Perry, like you said. Remember he
Yeah,
went broke, or there was talk he was going broke
yeah,
with, not paying enough taxes. You know,
yeah, yeah,
he was
absolutely.
he was evading taxes, and then, yeah, and then he left the UFC, and then he left Letty Gonzalez, and
Yeah,
then all of that happened, and then now he's a superstar. Maybe
man,
they're gonna rent
no.
him for the one. But yeah, what do you think about the divisions, and then we'll hit on the card coming up this week.
Um, the one. So what are the two divisions they're announcing? 165 potentially, allegedly announcing 165 and 175. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Look, it's interesting because we've got accustomed
and
to the
and
divisions
getting
at the
rid of
moment.
155.
Nah, getting rid of 170.
Oh, sorry, yeah, getting rid of 170. Sorry, yep,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's interesting, right? Because we've got accustomed to a division. Right? Obviously, creating two divisions in one instead of one creates more opportunities for more talent, right? And you get two more champions instead of one. That's very positive. There's going to be a lot of people who will now be able to shuttle between divisions more easily, right? Like 155 to 165 is not a big jump, right? 175 to 185, yeah, it's an okay jump, right? Not then 175 to 160. So there's going to be, we'll start seeing a lot more people wanting to do multiple divisions, right? I think it helps with weight cut. That's another thing. It does create it does create division, right? It does create a lot of jumping around. It will
and
create some
yeah,
confusion,
it
especially at the start.
it gives this alternate world where a Volkanovski, who they think, okay, Islam's so dominant, a huge name like Volk, he can step in now and be, mixing it up with Conor. That
Yeah,
those two worlds could collide.
yeah, but like I mean, it does open up endless possibilities, but it will come with its own headaches as well. Like I mean, I think we won't see the full impact of it until it's actually, um, it, put in place. But what confuses me, not confused, but what is interesting is that Dana White was absolutely against that. To the point where he said, like, you will not see that in my time. Like, I will not break up the divisions. Like, the divisions will stay. And look, 170 is another really good division. We got some of the legends are from that division. Right? GSP comes to mind, Kamaru Usman. Some of the great fighters are from that 175-pound division. Leon Edwards. So
Masvidal,
Masvidal, big names, right? Colby Covington, Shavkat. Now we got our own fighters like
yep, Nate.
Jack Della. You know, so yeah, like it's interesting, but where it'll benefit is say the 155 pounders who want to go to 170, there will be that size difference, whereas 165 to 175 not so much.
Yep,
I mean, I know
yep,
it's an extra
definitely.
5 pounds,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. I think it's all part of something fresh, evolving. New marketing. Maybe they felt things are getting a little stale,
yeah,
um, and let's do that. But yeah, speaking of keeping it new, this
yeah,
week we got a decent fight night coming
yeah,
up,
man,
headlined by Delidze Imavov,
yeah,
co-mained by Drew Dober
yep.
versus Money Marcano.
Moicano.
Moicano. Yep.
Yep, yep. I'm just looking at that card now. Yeah, but like it's another pretty good solid card. Fight now. Is it happening in the Apex again? I think it is, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
happening
Vegas.
in
Yep.
the yeah, Dolidze Imavov is a good main event. Like, Imavov had a lot of he comes from the same gym as Cyril Gahn, the French fighter, and he obviously had a lot of hype behind him. And then he ran into Sean Strickland, who sort of dominated him. But since then, obviously, we're going to see him fight another power puncher in Roman Dolidze, who's been relentless in his pursuit. in that middleweight division. So middleweight's having a lot of movement at the moment. So it's another exciting matchup there. I love the co-main, man. Like that's my favorite fight out of the whole card. Renato Moicano, Manny Moicano, he calls himself now, taking on Drew Dorbab. It's just Moicano. He just took himself to a different stratosphere after that post fight in Madison Square Garden, and since then, look, he's always a game fighter. Comes to fight, he made some bad decisions in terms of taking last minute fights against quality opponents and suffering the consequences. But outside of that, Renato Moicano is a solid fighter. He was in the featherweight division, now moved into the lightweight division. Let's see what he does. I mean, a win here could make things real exciting. It could push him up into, the top 10. I think he's ranked 13 now. Top 10, and he's asking for some big matchups, and we could see that. We got Randy Rude Boy Brown taking on Salikov in a welterweight showdown. Then there's a few good fights in there. Prelims, what's there? Molly McCann's fighting. So there is that. Yeah, man. Like to be honest, Temba Gorimbo is fighting. It's the guy who Rock influenced and helped out, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, pretty decent card. There's been a few cancellations in this card, but they've managed to still keep the majority of the good fights together, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I love the co-main. Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting feature prelim with Molly McCann. Her stock
yeah,
has dropped a little bit, but yeah, there's another female fight with Silva, uh,
yeah.
which is
Vivian Araua and
yeah,
Natalia
Natalia.
Silva,
Yeah,
flyweight.
definitely. Um, with the obviously delete say, we'll keep it with the main event delete say, and who do you sort of
Well, I'm
Imavov?
gonna
What do you see as the consequences from that one?
definitely a fight up the ladder, which is what these fighters sort of on that cusp of that top 10 should be aiming for is trying to push their name up, and that's definitely what this is going to do because this is two known names. I wouldn't say household names, but pretty recognizable. They've had good performances, and I think a good performance here could send either one of the guys with another, top five, top 10 matchup. So it's definitely, there's some implications in this fight. I'm actually favoring Roman Dolidze in this. I think his fight style sort of is the intensity, his pressure. I think which is sort of what Sean Strickland used to be able to overpower Nasruddin Imavov. And I think the same's going to probably happen here.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's gonna be a real close one. 5 rounder, obviously, but
Yeah,
two talented guys who I think have a great future, but a chance to, like you said, really make a big
yeah.
name. To start the year. Obviously, this is still one of the first, third, second or third card of the year. So
Third, I believe. Yeah,
they want to start with a bang, and then also get that momentum as we head into the first pay per view,
yeah,
second pay per view of the year. The next one with
yep,
Ilya Tapuria, Alexander the Great, Volkanovski,
yeah.
and then
That's
the countdown continues, right? We'll be bringing everyone the latest news. The sooner we get this announcement with 300, our prediction, you heard it, is
yep.
Dricus with the last style
Style
bender.
bender. And man, like for all the MMA fanatics, be excited because we've got cards for the next 11 consecutive weeks. It's going to be a card every week, so which is quite exciting. Even the next one after this weekend is also a middleweight showdown. Jack and Manson. This is Joe Pfeiffer. Just realized. So middleweight, man, middleweight's the division to be in.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I hadn't looked past this week. So there's another
Yeah,
fight night after this one with Jack.
prior to 298. Yeah. So we got Jack and Manson, who at one point, man, people thought he was going to be challenging for a title, but then obviously, unfortunately, wasn't the case. And then he's taken on Joe Pfeiffer, who's one of Dana White's favorite fighters, from the Contender
Yeah,
series. And
there's
yeah,
there's been a lot of forgotten names. Yeah, I saw Shabazian finally
Yeah.
got another thing, and what's his name? Marvin the Dream Vittori. We haven't even got anything with him, and Kananaya.
No, Vittoria's fighting um, Allen, Brennan Allen. I think in March. So somewhere in March, he's got a fight lined up, which is a good fight. Yeah, Hermanson though, man, it's been sidelined. He actually went to Sydney and cut weight, and obviously seems like it wasn't rewarded for that.
What can you tell us with Darren Till? Have you heard anything with him, and do you see a future where he's ever back?
I don't know, man. Like, I just don't know where he's at. And I know he teased everyone by saying, something's coming or he's coming back. But I don't know if it's necessarily to the UFC. He obviously had a bad run towards the end of his end of that run. But look, another big name brings a lot of excitement. A lot of talent as well. I think that loss to Woodley really impacted him. Um,
Yeah, can you
but
imagine
man, let's
a UK stadium show with Leon, Tom Aspinall, and
yeah.
Till, and then
Till will
you
be
know
huge, yeah.
Pimblett, McCann, and then Allen. You know,
McGregor. They would never. They will always do McGregor in either Madison Square or Vegas.
hey, one of the under. I'll get your final question to you about one of the underrated matchups I'm looking forward to is Ian Gary. Like
Oof.
that's one of
Ian
mine.
Gary, Jeff Neal, man, absolutely. There's a lot of bad blood there, dating all the way back to when the fight first got announced, and Jeff Neal had to pull out due to illness. But man, Ian Gary had Jeff Neal's mugshot on his T-shirt, and that caused a lot of anger from Jeff Neal's end, and obviously the fight got pulled. And then we now know where Ian Gary's at, and all that's happened with him. And it's going to be interesting, man. It seems to be the back and forth that started, and I saw a couple of videos surface where they're already starting to taunt each other. So, man, absolutely hit the nail on the head. Like that card, which is UFC 298. That's why I keep saying, man, it's 298. Don't sleep on it. You got Henry Cejudo and Merab Dvalishvili fighting as well. So it's
Eh,
a great card.
I won't sleep on it, but there'll be a lot of fighters going to sleep on that one.
Hey, we should yeah, we should get together for that card. I feel like it warrants it. You know, bring your Aussie flag down when you come, and
Yep, most definitely. Well, yeah, everyone, been a great episode. DJ talking about UFC 300, the momentum as we continue to build into the second pay-per-view of the year. We'll do an episode on boxing too because we had a big
mm,
announcement with
yep,
Australian George Kambosos to fight
Loma
Lomachenko. That's been confirmed. So for all you
heard.
boxing, yep, fanatics, right? We got you covered. And of course, yeah, to continue the MMA stuff. And then Francis Ngannou, we're going to wait to see what what's next on the cards for him after the hugely successful, um, event against Fury. And then
Yep.
obviously, yeah, he's now going to be taking on, um, what was it? We got the Wilder.
We got Fury versus Music coming up. That's why I was searching as you were, because I'm pretty sure it's in February. Is there a date? Uh, Let me check, because that's a massive fight, right? That's a unification bout that we've been calling for so long. Yeah, Feb
Yep,
17th.
definitely. Yep.
Hey, that 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 week, that Sunday is going to be hectic, man. We've got UFC 298 and we've got Usyk versus Fury. Oh, come on. That's just, I feel spoiled.
Yeah, AJ, that's it. It's AJ Ngannou.
Oh, you're talking about Ngannou. Sorry, man. I thought you
Yeah.
were talking about Fury. Yeah, yeah. Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua. Yeah, that's in, when is that? That's March?
Yep, soon. I think, yeah, in the same location, right? Ryder,
Yeah,
isn't it in
Riyadh.
Riyadh? Yeah.
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 Um, I want to see the date now too. But I'm glad, man. I'm glad that March 8th is the fight. I'm glad that the that Saudi Arabia came to the party, because they're now making these big fights. They're bringing the big bucks out, and you can't refuse the big bucks. You know what I mean? Who would have thought that Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren will work together?
Yeah, no, they're getting it done. I'm loving it. We'll
Yeah,
probably see Money Mayweather come out and do another big event. Jake Paul, but
Jake Paul.
yeah, no, perfect matchups. Obviously Wilder, losing to Parker really leaves him out for the minute. But dare I say
Yeah,
he'll end up fighting AJ at some point. They'll
yeah.
they'll
I think
cash
he
in on
should.
that.
I think he should fight Ruiz. I think Wilder should fight Ruiz. It's good fight for him. If he wins it, he's right back in that picture.
Yep, definitely, man. Well, yeah, salute to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Smash that like button on YouTube and leave a comment section, right? Let us know what you want to see for UFC 300 and coming up for the rest of the year, right? Do we finally see Conor McGregor get a date, right? If I'm Michael Chandler, I'm kind of feeling like, man, just give me someone else. But yeah, we'll continue to talk about it and we'll be back with another episode next week. Peace.
Peace.